Special good afternoon to all our listeners and audience. My name is Augustine Lewis. This is the second official episode of Woke, a youth program with a difference, a youth program to awaken the minds of the Grenadian people. Today we have a very special guest, Miss Kassandra Mitchell, and she would be on this program with me and she would be ready to spark the minds of the Grenadian people. So I'm just going to introduce my guest, Cassandra.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm no stranger to this program. I am Kassandra Mitchell, and I am the Executive Director and founder of the Caribbean Association for Youth Development. It is a nonprofit organization that focuses on providing support to vulnerable women and youth in Grenada and throughout the region. So, hi.
Today we will have a deep conversation on a number of topics in terms of youth development. One of the things I want to ask our guests is that what are your advice for young entrepreneurs, young people that want to start their own business? What are some of the advice? What are some of the encouragements you would give them? Understanding the present, financial and economic construct that we live in currently.
Well, before I even go into that, first of all, I'd like to commend you and take some credit for being one of the brains behind this initiative. I think it's really crucial that at this point in our history in Grenada, young people being the majority, that we come together and talk about issues that affect us, whether it's social issues, whether it's political issues or otherwise. So let me commend you and take a little bit of credit at the same time for being one of the brains behind this initiative. I think that as young people, we need to, regardless of our political affiliations or perceived political affiliations, we need to come together and address some of the issues that we are facing, come together and sit at a table and talk about it. I looked at the program last week with yourself and Joel, and one of the things that you guys said that I support is the fact that, as young persons and older people, we have to find some sort of middle ground and talk about it. Too many times you have technocrats who sit at the table and decide what we want as young people without consulting with us. So again, my commendations for the program. Entrepreneurship. Of course, that is an issue. We talk about the economic issues that young people are facing here in Grenada and unemployment. And underemployment is an issue that many young persons face. And of course, entrepreneurship is an option for young persons. But before you even talk about entrepreneurship, you have to talk about creating that enabling environment for young persons to become entrepreneurs. So we have to have some sort of discussions with our policymakers to find out where we are in terms of that enabling environment in order to be able to get young persons to become entrepreneurs. And it's even linked to the education system. So many times when you look at our education system, it's focused on academia, and very little emphasis has been placed on entrepreneurship and young people becoming their own employer and creating jobs for their peers. So this is a really deep issue, so you can't just jump into entrepreneurship like that. You have to talk about all of the issues that are tied into that particular issue of entrepreneurship for young persons.
Most definitely. This was a very deep response, and I am woke. As a young person, we all time hear this phrase, that the young people are not ready. They are not ready for leadership. They are not ready to lead this country, and it is not their time. How do you respond to such a question?
I will ask another question. When is our time? When is our time to become leaders? And again, you have to look at the demographics as it is at this moment in Grenada. 60% of the population are persons aged 35 and under. So when our leaders, our older persons are saying, young persons becoming leaders of tomorrow, one of the questions I always ask is, when is tomorrow? When is our time to become leaders? When do you know that we are ready to become leaders? So yes, you have to ask yourself all of those questions. And even as young people who want to get into leadership roles, one of the questions that one have to ask oneself is, am I ready to become a leader? Leadership entails a lot. So you have to ask yourself that. And for those who are saying that young people aren't ready? When will we be ready?
I would say we're ready when we work and we're ready to come forward and to put forward our ideas in a collective way. And as I said before, it is not a battle between different age group, but I see it as a coming together of the different age group, and we finding common grounds and we bridging a generational gap, because to lead this country forward we need unity. We need everyone working in harmony for one goal only, and that is for nation building. So I would love to see, a sitting and a gathering of the different age group, with, as I stated, one mind, one goal and one mind, which is, nation building and nation development. And I think it can happen, but then again, we have to be able to reach to the point where we put differences aside, where we put egos aside, and we do something for our country. And I think, the mere fact that we having this conversation and that people are listening, this can spark their minds and to spark that consciousness. So togetherness would be a main philosophy moving forward as a country. And just this conversation is very beautiful, because I know that there will be minds that will be sparking. People would want to come together and to have that conversation.
I mean, you talk about the coming together, and there's something ageism that does exist. I think a lot of people don't want to address that, but it does. If you look at the older demographics, the older persons, there are myths, and I think you mentioned it earlier, where persons believe that young people are not ready. You hear so many times that young men just want to sit on the block and just smoke weed or marijuana. That's not true. You hear that myth again that all they want to do is just sit and make children, and that's not true. And even among our demographic, the younger people, what you hear is that what the older folks don't support us and they don't understand us. And while that may be true for the majority, and I'm speaking from my experience as a young person and an advocate, there are older folks who do support young people. There are persons, young people who understand, So, but I think I agree with you. We have to find some sort of middle ground where the older folks and the younger people can come together and just talk about issues that affect us, issues that affect them as well. Because while we boast about being young persons, we are getting older, and we are going to become older folks, and the generations after us are going to look at us as old people as well. So we need to have that discussion. And ageism does exist, on both ends. I think there are persons, older folks, who don't understand young people, as well as there are persons within that demographic who understands us, and vice versa. But we need to find some middle ground, and it is really crucial at this time in our history. And I keep saying it over and over, because you hear so many times about leaders, and as a young person, I want to see more young people get into leadership roles in the private sector, in agriculture, in politics. And hopefully, with this program, with this initiative, we can have discussions, objective discussions, to talk about the issues that affect us as young people and find solutions. So it's not just talking about the problems, but hopefully find some sort of solutions to solve them as well. Because over the years, all you've been hearing is talk, 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 and we're not seeing action as it relates to solving the issues that affect us as young people.
Most definitely. And I like the word that you use. You use action. And I believe that affirmative action is needed. As you stated, there have been several conversation, years and upon years upon years, and we're still looking on, and there haven't been any concrete solution. I think that we are the generation that should spark that action. We are the young people that should come forward and to bring serious issues at the table, and to come up with solid solution and actions, because at the end of the day, we could keep talking. There's a lot of eloquent people in Grenada. They're bright and they're intelligent, but at the end of the day, we need something more than all talk. We need to put solid plans and into actions, and we need to really change the face of this country, and it's action, most definitely.
You talk a lot about changing the face of the country. You talk a lot about finding solutions. But as an advocate, one of the things that I've noticed is that there seems to be a gap among young people we talk a lot about, among ourselves about the problems that affect us, but when given the opportunity to speak to the policymakers and to those who can actually create change, there is silence. There seems to be this fear that has enveloped our country, and this fear that has permeated our demographic, young people, and they're afraid to speak out and talk about issues. Um, I don't want to politicize this, because regardless of which political party sits in government, you hear so many stories of victimization. How do we move past that? How can we talk about our stories and the things that affect us objectively without being attacked, by the powers that be? There's so many issues that as young people we need to address. I mean, how do we come together as youth and solve these problems? And how do we get our leaders to listen? How do we as young people step into the role of leadership? I really want to see the next Mr. Andel, in the private sector, the next young person, owning a supermarket. And I do want to take the time to, give a shout out to Andy, Hotspot, doing a marvelous job as a young man. But we need to see more young persons, stepping into leadership roles in the private sector, in agriculture. We need to, as young people, come together, regardless of our political affiliations, perceived political affiliations, and talk about the issues that affect us and find some sort of solutions, and hopefully bring the older folks at a table and find some middle ground to solving a lot of these issues that affect us. And it's deep. I mean, I'm talking and my mind is going all over, because you talk about the problems that we face, the social problems, the political problems. But one of the things that I talk about a lot is the moral fabric of society that seems to have deteriorated. If you look at our judicial system, you see that it's crowded with sexual offenses, crimes against women and children. How do we get past that? How do we get, or can we get back to that point in our society where a community or a village grow up a child? One of the things that I say within my network is that we have to be realistic. I think in this era, with so much knowledge about sexual offenses and all those things that are affecting women and youth, and I mean boys as well are victims, can we really trust our neighbors? Can we really get back to that point in society where you can leave your 7-year-old daughter or your 5-year-old son with a neighbor, with the uncle, or with a friend? How do we really solve these problems as young people? And that is why I'm happy to be part of this movement. And one of the things I want to do for the persons who are looking on and who are listening to the program is to call and urge young persons. It is time that we come together and we be one voice and find some solutions to moving out of this. As an advocate, I've been an advocate for over a decade. I do not like to see where we are, where young people are, where Grenada is heading. And we need to find some sort of solutions. We need to find answers now.
Most definitely. There was a particular issue. I remember a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, sorry. There was an issue with a underage girl and a few adults, and there was an ongoing investigation, and the alleged perpetrator, he was allowed to even obtain a bus license, and right now this individual is in contact with other young girls. And I asked myself, what is there in place to protect our young women, our young kids against these predators? I have had several conversations for a sex offenders registry, but how have we moved from that? There are still victims out there who are suffering at the hands of their attackers, and nothing is being done. It seems like when a situation occurs, we get emotional about it and we make a lot of loud noise, and then a few months later we forget the victims. So I want to know, as an advocate, how do we get past such a situation where there is an offender that we just allow in society to just mingle with other young person, and who could be one of their possible victims. So how do you speak to that?
I like the fact that you said we, because to give credit to stakeholders, a lot has been done to update policies, and as relates to domestic violence, the Domestic Violence Act was updated, but the responsibility to resolve the issue of sexual offenses doesn't lie only in the hands of government. It falls in the hands of the community. It falls in the hands of parents. And it's deep. You can't address this only at a superficial level. Again, you go back to the fabric of society that has deteriorated over the years. You have, there are cases where parents right here in Grenada are known to um, prostitute their girls and their boys. There are cases where you have young girls, going out to older men asking for money. So all of those levels are intertwined. They are connected. The community, you're talking about stakeholders, you're talking about policymakers, you're talking about the judicial system. So I like the fact that you say we. And again, it comes back to us coming to that table and finding some middle ground and realistically addressing these issues that affect us as young people. Because if we don't, again, what sort of society are we going to have in 10, 20, 30 years? So it has to be a holistic approach with everyone's involvement. For me as an advocate, being involved with domestic violence, issues, women and youth, I want to see stricter penalties for the perpetrators. And even for the perpetrators, I want to see maybe some rehabilitation. I know we have Richmond Hill Prison, but is it a rehabilitation center? Do you go there and actually come out a rehabilitated person? So these issues go far deeper than just at the policy level, and it has to be a we effort.
Most definitely. You said something very deep earlier. You said that it takes a village to raise a child. And we have become so individualistic due to technology and social media. I'm just going to use an illustration. I remember a time like probably 18 years into the past where the community used to have one television, and then you would have everybody surround that television, and you share ideas, and it was a meeting place for the community, and it had that togetherness. But with technology and social media, everyone is for this, everyone is on a cell phone, everyone is on a tablet. So to me, this sort of split apart the society into an individualistic mentality rather than we coming together as a society. And I think that to solve an issue of sexual violence or even domestic violence, you need a community approach. You need to be your brother's keeper, you need to be your sister's keeper. And because, for instance, every single person in Grenada know of a victim. You may have a friend, you may have a family member, there may be somebody that who is abusing a young girl or a young boy, and due to your connection with that person, you may look the next direction. So at the end of the day, the burden cannot be placed solely on policymakers and government, but we have to look at ourselves as a society, as you speak to the moral fabric. So this issue is a societal issue, and we all have a part to play. And your part may be making a police report. Even though the parents may try to sweep it under the rug, you may need to step in as a good neighbor, to protect this child, to protect this boy, to protect this girl. And that is what is needed currently. And most of the problems that we face in Grenada, I think that if we can come together as a society, we can solve most of them. Because most time we have an approach that government should do everything, government should solve every problem, and I think that is unfair to government. There are some things that collectively we can do as a people, and it's time for we to get up and solve most of our problems and be more community oriented. So what is your take on that?
Again, I like the fact that you keep referring to we, and you're right. We can't just wait for government to be our problem solvers. We have to come together as communities and try to see like-minded persons who are against sexual offenses, sexual crimes against women and children. Like-minded persons who want to see more young people involved in entrepreneurship. Maybe a young businessman or an older person who has a passion for helping young people, invest in an entrepreneurial program that promotes the involvement of young people in in getting involved in entrepreneurship. Maybe in investing in some of them, maybe in taking on a couple young persons as interns and train them. Share your experiences, share your challenges, your lessons learned, your best practices in being an entrepreneur and get them involved in entrepreneurship. So of course, it takes a collective effort, and I agree 100% with you. So, but we talk about moral fabric, but it has to be like-minded persons who are for the same thing and who are against, sexual crimes.
Most definitely. One of, I would say, the pink elephant in Grenada, and I think that it is not being addressed, is the perception of society and people who are struggling with mental health. I remember a few months ago, there was this video circulating on social media with this man who was clearly suffering from mental illnesses, and people would post a video and they would make fun of people who suffer with mental health. What can we do as a society to ensure that this does not continues?
Mental health.
Mental health.
Mental health is an issue that's not being addressed in Grenada, even the health sector. So, I mean, if you look at our health sector, it's in shambles. And mental health, you hardly hear anything about it. I think that, one of our suggestions for persons who are solutions oriented is to maybe ask of our policymakers to place more emphasis on mental health issues in Grenada. One of the things we just recently celebrated, the anniversary of the revolution. And as a young person, knowing a lot of persons who were involved in that era, I noticed that there is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a lot of persons who are suffering from the trauma that they experienced during that era, and it has never been addressed. There are persons, we talk about sexual offenses, we talk about domestic violence. There are persons who maybe as children have experienced those crimes, and they have never received the sort of help and counseling and support that they needed in order to overcome that trauma. And again, this is not a program to bash any one sector or any government or policy maker. But over the years, regardless of who sat in government, I've noticed that the mental health sector has been ignored. The whole discussion about mental health. Police officers, are they trained to deal with mental health perpetrators, victims, are they? So all of these issues that we talk about and we make mention here, it goes far deeper than just the policy level. It goes to training. Are there resources to train our police officers to deal with mental health, to train our health practitioners to deal with mental health, to train our policymakers? Because maybe even within their network, they may have a cabinet minister or a fellow colleague who is going through some sort of personal trauma. How do you identify these things? So maybe one of the things that we can suggest to our policymakers is having more investment and emphasis on mental health in Grenada. And being an advocate across the region, I know it's something that has been raised with my regional colleagues as well, the whole issue and discussion around the mental health sector.
I think that, education is important, and society needs to have a lot of serious discussions. Because most time you see
but
someone.
Discussions don't solve problems. Money does. So even having those discussions, you have to have the resources in order to be able to implement a lot of these policies and programs to talk about mental health, to talk about domestic violence, sexual assault, lack of professionalism within the police force. Because when you talk about mental health, in the case of a perpetrator or a victim who may be suffering from mental health or some sort of mental health issue, do you have training? Do you have the resources to actually provide the training for these officers and all of those persons within that sector who may come in contact with persons who have suffered some sort of trauma? So discussions are good, and that's why we've been having for years. That's why we're having this program, because we keep having too many discussions and we're not seeing actions coming out. All of these workshops and discussions and programs I've been having over the years. So hopefully we start seeing more actions and less talk shops.
Most definitely. The context I was speaking at is to sensitize society, because most people or most communities may not know how to deal with people who have mental health issues.
But sensitize them how? Marshall, we live in an era of technology where a lot of persons you mentioned earlier have access to their smartphones, have access to a computer. I think there's also a personal responsibility in an era of technology for persons to, take that smartphone and instead of going on YouTube, and I mean, with all due respect to persons who watch their pornography, to each his own, but take a 5 minutes and you sit and you educate yourself about mental health, you educate yourself about entrepreneurship. We have become too dependent on governments, and maybe it was created to be that way, because there's a saying that policymakers, politicians love an ignorant people, because that's what they feed off of, our ignorance or lack of knowledge. We have become too dependent on governments present and past, and I think we have a personal responsibility as well to educate ourselves on issues. Take 5 minutes, 20 minutes of that time, and go do some research so you understand exactly what is going on in the world. So yes.
I most definitely take your point that we should be more proactive in terms of our knowledge and in terms of our development as a people. But what about the people who cannot go to YouTube? What about the people who are not inclined technologically? How do we sensitize those people? How do we bring these people at a decision table and to let them know it's not okay to make fun of someone who has mental health issues? Is not okay to feed into that stigma that you're mad, come out there, you're sick. How do we as society evolve? I've seen those people as problems instead of seeing them as assets. And in terms of rehabilitation, because to me the stigma of mental health is even worse than the illness itself, because I have seen several instances in my community, whereby they would have had young people who are just have the normal frustration, and the community will be like, you're mad, come out there, you're mad, woman you want, you're frustrated, and then those words start being reinforced into their psyche and into their consciousness, and next thing you know, this young person ends up in Monday.
I mean, you talk about raising awareness and having community discussions, but again, there's still some sort of personal responsibility and onus on the individual, because you can go out there, you can spend money, financial resources, spend time investing in all of those workshops and talk shops and community sessions, but that individual not within him or herself taking the information is going to go back there in the community with the same mindset. So there is some personal responsibility to change mindsets, and that's why for me as an advocate, my emphasis is so much on young people. I believe that there is a demographic, a percentage of the older folks who are already enculturated to think a certain way, and maybe with some emphasis on more emphasis on young people, we can hopefully change that mindset that has been obviously passed down to them, because they were actually they learned it somewhere. So you talk a lot about raising awareness on the persons who don't have access to YouTube and to technology. But if that individual doesn't have some sort of personal responsibility and say, you know what, I'm going to take that information that I learned and incorporate it into my life, then you have just wasted another set of grant funding.
I understand your mindset and I totally agree with it, but at the same time, I disagree with it as well. And I think we have a responsibility, because we don't want to sideline any part of our society, and I still want to reach out to them, I still want to speak to them. I want to let them know that it is not okay to make fun of someone who has mental illnesses, because it could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be my sister, it could be a brother. And as a society, we have to come together. I think that togetherness is one of the most important ingredients, if I should say, to a successful society, to a successful Grenada, to an elevated and evolved Grenada. Most of the problems that we have, I would not say it's a political problem. Is a problem, is a societal
It's
problem.
a societal problem, because
And
remember, the politicians that we elect into office comes from the same society that we are part of. So it is not just a political issue. Of course, you need political will in order to be able to change policies and implement programs. But these politicians that we elect into office come from that society. And now on the issue of politics, one of the things that I would love to see young people do in the future is to elect persons based on that person's ability to get the job done, and not because you like that political party. Because I'm going to be very honest. I think at this time we are stagnant. I mean, you hear so much about a booming economy, and Grenada's economy has increased by 5.2%. But is that booming economy trickling down to the rural communities? Because you're not seeing it. you're not seeing. So where is that boost in the economy? And one of the things I would really love, I wish I had the opportunity, or maybe we had the opportunity to sit for half an hour with our honorable prime minister and or minister of trade and maybe some other cabinet ministers and ask some hard questions. I think young persons, we want to understand what is the formula maybe to calculate, how our economy has increased. That would be interesting to learn because, as an advocate, we go out into rural communities and we see so much poverty. So, where is that booming economy? How do you calculate how your the economy has increased? Maybe there's an economist in the audience who's looking at the program and can maybe provide us with the formula. Because when we go there, and even across the region, with my regional colleagues, one of the things that we say, unless you cannot see that reflected in your people, that booming economy, then it's a lie.
I totally understand your point, and I share
Stop
most
understanding
of.
my point. You are an advocate. You live in a rural community. How much development are you seeing in St. Patrick's? I know we can talk about the King Co providing jobs and the hotel providing jobs, but let's be realistic. Most of the jobs that are offered to locals are entry-level positions. When you go to the hotels and you ask for a manager, it's always a person with an accent. So, no, yes, and we are grateful for the jobs. No one is saying that we are not. But we need to start asking some hard questions of our leaders. And again, this is not political, because regardless of who was sitting in government, I think as young people, being the majority at this point in our history, we need to start holding our leaders accountable. And one of the things I would love young people to stop using the term, it is not a government-funded program. It is a taxpayer-funded program. These monies belong to us as taxpayers. So we need to know, where did our money go? You from the community, maybe you can share with the listeners how much development you're seeing in St. Patrick's.
Well, I would not lie, but in terms of the economy in St. Patrick's, it is at a standstill. Most of the promises that have been made after the last general election, they are yet to materialize. But it's only 1 year.
I'm sure our prime minister would disagree with you.
I would give the administration a chance to deliver on most of their promises.
Let me correct you. The administration has not been there for 1 year. This is their second consecutive term.
I share your sentiment as well, and it's only a year into the new reign, and I'm gonna.
But they had 5 years before to do some more work. Why are you trying to be so diplomatic? And that's what I'm saying to you, Michelle. We need to start as young people addressing these issues realistically. We are not here bashing any government. We are not bashing our political leaders. I'll give credit to our political leaders present and past. They have done work. You have seen improvement. In the case of the New National Party, you have seen a lot of infrastructural development, and we are grateful for it. We have a stadium and we have a couple nice big 5-star hotels, that we can boast about. When I travel across the region, I can say, well, you know what, we have a Silver Sands and we have Sandals, as part of our economy, booming economy. But let's be realistic. We have to address these issues realistically if we are to find solutions to these problems. So stop trying to tiptoe political lines. We are not bashing the administration. They have done some work. But as young people, we want to see more. Maybe we want to apply to Silver Sands and get a managerial position. Maybe we are tired of the entry-level jobs. And maybe they are using the hundreds of construction jobs provided by these infrastructural projects to calculate the booming economy and how the unemployment rate has lowered. And these are questions, Mr. Prime Minister, that we need to ask. We need to ask, and we need answers too.
Most definitely, and as you stated, there must be a level of accountability, whereby the young people come together and to hold our leaders accountable and ask, as you stated, the tough question that I was trying to dodge a while ago.
Well, you're not the prime minister. Are you dodging the question? We're having a discussion. So let's talk about how these issues are affecting us. And when we sit here, and remember that we are not just representing ourselves, But I know for me, and I can speak for myself, I am representing the hundreds, if not thousands, of young persons who are out there who, when I go into communities, they say to me, you know what, I am tired, I am frustrated, I need a job, I've applied to 20 different places and I have not received employment. I need more access to scholarships and educational opportunities. So we are not just sitting in this chair talking and representing ourselves. We are talking for the hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who are affected by social problems, political decisions, or lack of political decisions in some cases. We need to represent them. We can't. Why are you dodging the questions?
Most definitely, Miss Mitchell. I apologize. I was trying to be a diplomat. Yeah, but as a rural economy, St. Patrick has suffered. Not only St. Patrick's, but St. Mark's as well, St. Andrews. To me, the rural economy is on her knees, and she's begging for life. She's begging for, someone who can take her up. And as you stated, we, as the younger generation, we have to address this, and it's not only by talk but by affirmative action. So how do we put government and the policymakers at that table to really hold them accountable and say this is what we demand as a young people? Because, for instance, we are the biggest voting bloc in Grenada. Imagine if every young person were to network into a single voting bloc, and we go to every political party and we look at their manifestos and we look at their plans, and we see which plans best fit our needs, and we say to them, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is the area of the economy that you need to develop, this is the jobs that we would like to have, this is the level of training that we would like to have. But most definitely we need more investment in the rural economy. Development has to be more than hotels. And the question I'm gonna ask, has the hotel become the plantation? Is this the new style of plantation, whereby it's not in the fields where you can get steam, but it is? And I say this not to be derogatory to anyone who is in the hotel field. I do not want to bash your occupation. I think what you're doing is beautiful. You're feeding yourself and your family, but I want to see more. I want to see more in terms of agro processing, in terms of agriculture.
And maybe tying in agriculture into tourism. That's something that government present and past we are not seeing much of. And I mean, I'm saying this, and I can actually see the Prime Minister disagreeing with me, because maybe a couple farmers have gotten contracts with Silver Sands and sandals, and kudos to them. But what about the rural farmers? What opportunities are being provided for them? And one of the things that I have said to farmers over the years is that we need to form cooperatives. Remember, Grenada is a small economy and we can only produce so much, but as a collective voice, as a collective, we can offer so much more. So we mentioned earlier about that, working together as community persons. That's an option right there. And you're right, we see a lot of emphasis on tourism. Recently we had in the space of 8 or 9 months, we had 2 planes crashing. So one sneeze, one incident, one accident, and the whole tourism sector crashes. We are not seeing investment in agriculture, especially rural agriculture, so that the rural farmer, that poor man, can provide some sort of support to his family as well. So we are grateful for the jobs being provided in the tourism sector. But I know that we want to see a lot more investment in agriculture, and agriculture tying into tourism, and agriculture tying into health, because of course your health is your wealth. So we need to see more investment in that and tying in the different sectors, because I think it centers, all of those sectors centers around agriculture, your health, tourism. How are you going to feed the tourists if you don't have? Are we going to keep importing food? I mean, you look at our food import bill and it's ridiculous. So we need to start seeing more investment in the rural economy, more investment in agriculture, and we need to see more young people and women getting involved in agriculture. If you look at the agriculture as it is, in Grenada, we still use a lot of traditional methodologies, which is fine, but I think we are light years behind in terms of technology in agriculture. And maybe we need to see, we have a Ministry of ICT or a Minister of ICT, we need to see incorporation of ICT into the agriculture sector. There are a lot of different practices that the developed world is they're using. Maybe we can replicate some of them to adapt to to our culture and to our society. So again, as young people, I'm certain that we are grateful for the jobs provided in the tourism sector, but we want to see more.
Most definitely, and we want to work the nation, and we want to work the young people to demand more for our leaders in the rural economy, to demand more in terms of development. And I would say, is agriculture that, as you stated, just to piggyback on your point, agriculture should be that spider web, that web that connects the different ministries and different sectors. Because, look, for instance, imagine we have a farm. We have a farm let's say we're up in the mountains, and then we would have tourists doing tours. We could cut a sugar cane and give it to the tourists. There's watermelon, there's oranges, and everything is fresh. So we want to give that tourist, an intimate connection with Grenada. Just the way that a normal farmer would feel going into the fields on our morning time. We want to sell that. So when that tourist goes back to their home country, they can relate that story. They could share that experience, and an experience is much more powerful than an ad.
Of course. I
You
mean,
know.
I've had the opportunity to bring in colleagues and friends of mine who have never been to the Caribbean, never been to Grenada, and working around persons who work in the tourism sector. One of the things that I hear a lot is that a lot of the tourists come to these hotels and they book the hotels, and on mornings, what do you get for breakfast? Bacon and eggs. Come on, please. They left America and Canada and the UK to come for an experience, a Caribbean, a Grenadian experience. Yet you're in the hotel and you're getting bacon and eggs. I remember a couple weeks ago I met a couple, and they said to me, "We've been here for 2 weeks and we have never had oil down." So what exactly are we promoting? And that's why I go back to my point about tying agriculture into the tourism sector. What exactly are we offering our tourists who visit our sands? Or I mean, what, Granance Beach? How often how are we going to keep promoting Granance Beach? We're not promoting our food, we're not promoting our history. Because that's one of the things, just if you talk to a tourist, they will tell you that there's something about Grenadian history that's, of course, stands out from the other Caribbean islands. So are we capitalizing on all of those opportunities? Or are we just going to say, well, you know what, Silver Sands is here in Grenada and we have a 5-star hotel. So the person just wants to come to Silver Sand because it's a new location to try it out. But what sort of experience are we offering to the tourists who come to Grenada?
Yeah, and I think that we can sell more experience, and we want to bring the tourists into the rural, economy. Instead of the fancy bars, why not have the tourists in a simple rum shop? Drinking a rivers with the local, interacting with the locals, sharing their stories, making a video, they probably post it online, it go viral. Other people see that, they want to come back to Grenada. We have to integrate tourism. They state that tourism is everybody business, but give everybody a chance to be a part of tourism. Do not have it at this central location. Tourism is much more than Grenada, but is throughout the entire country. And it is one dimensional. You look at this bus, they go to Lepers Hill, then they go to Sulphur Spring, then they go to Grant. So to me, we have to be able to mix it up. We have to be able to offer something different. It's the same old, same old. We want to give them that Grenadian experience that they would want to come back. We boast that we're the land of the jab jab, but I haven't seen the jab jab in the ODI, in the cricket. And I think that was an opportunity miss. If we're the land of the jab jab, let us promote the jab jab and sell the jab jab. And how are we monetizing it? Most times we hear jab jab, but how are we monetizing the jab? And there could be, to me, the opportunity in terms of merchandising is great. And how do we invest, again, not to stray, but into our local music industry, in terms of studio equipments? Are we providing concession to our upcoming artists? What are some of the workshops that we can have with them to improve in terms of stage performance and voice training? Because there are many young artists in Grenada who are talented, and
Yeah.
they don't have the financial support.
Oh yes, and I
You
hear a
know,
lot of discussions, by politicians talking about the arts and the culture. But over the years, just like the agricultural sector, that's also a sector that you see that has been neglected by governments past and present. So you're correct. I mean, we recently had how many artists in Trinidad representing Grenada, and I don't think that there's any monetary price that can, actually thank these young men for what they have done and how they have marketed and promoted Grenada just by going out there and just doing what they love.
Most definitely. And Grenada is a country that has tremendous potential. We have the talent and we have the raw materials. But the question I'm going to ask, how do we take the raw talent? How do we take the raw materials and produce products? And this is what is going to take this country to the next level. Because look at look at nutmeg as a product. It's a $1 billion industry, but are we making $500 million a year? And we haven't exploited nutmeg to its fullest potential. I was having a conversation with someone, and the person was educating me that the oil that is used to cool the fighter jet's engine is nutmeg oil. So every war that is being fought, Grenada is a part of it because our nutmeg oil.
But we are no longer the Isle of Spice. We are pure Grenada.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I think that this was a missed opportunity. Because Grenada, how many spices are we planting? Does
But
Grenada
why should we
have?
be planting spice when Grenada has now been marketed as pure Grenada?
At the end of the day, this is not something that I am pleased with, but this is something that can definitely be addressed. And we should have a spice policy. How many acres of spices are we planting per year? And I was looking at a program again, and it was about India. India is one of the biggest producers of spice in the world, and even India cannot satisfy the entire global market in terms of spices. So imagine if we invest in spices, there is a ready market for us.
But we have an administration, respectfully, who places little to no emphasis on agriculture. They place a lot of emphasis on tourism. Silver Sands and the Sandals and all of the big hotels. And we had a recent announcement that we have two major hotels coming to St. David, the Virgin Parish. I don't know how much consultation was done with the persons from St. David's, but now we're getting a hotel. So thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. So we're getting a hotel. So that's where the emphasis is. It's not on agriculture, and we have to be realistic. And the only how this is going to change is as the majority, as young people, like-minded young people who see opportunities in agriculture, maybe ask our policymakers for a seat at the decision-making table, for an opportunity to have some discussions with us. Too many times we have these technocrats, policymakers, who they travel 5-star, first class, I know many of them will disagree and say that's not true, but they go to these hotels and all of these policies are signed and ratified. There's no consultation with the Grenadian public. And I can say this because I'm a member of civil society. We sit back and we hear the Prime Minister boasting about social partners and civil society being accepting a lot of and I can say publicly that's not true. I sit with my peers and my colleagues and we talk about a lot of these policies and programs and social impacts that are affecting us in Grenada, and many of us don't agree with the direction in which Grenada is going. So it's an untrue statement. Maybe there are one or two persons within civil society and social partners who may agree with the Honorable Prime Minister, but I think across the table I can say openly on behalf of my civil society colleagues that we have a lot of concerns.
I'm pleased with what you have said, but as with most of our audience, I have never heard civil society openly disagree with anything that this administration has done.
And maybe one of the things that we can do is to maybe bring some other members of civil society to this discussion so that they can walk the Grenadian people as to some of the discussions that were held, behind closed doors and some of the responses that came from the Prime Minister. We should not be afraid to say these things because it's not like if we are making them up. And I keep sharing with my civil society colleagues and members that it's time that we speak up and speak out. And for those who are afraid to speak out, time for you to step aside because now we have a new breed of civil society representatives who we're going to be very vocal on issues. But so maybe that's an option. I can bring maybe members from the Conference of Churches here. I hope you guys are not afraid to share your stories about the discussions that you had with the Prime Minister. But I think across the table I can tell you that we do have some serious concerns as to the direction that Grenada is going.
And it's wonderful that you guys have concerns, and I think that you play a very important role in the society as being a watchdog and to keep an eye on the current administration. And I think that, as you stated, that you guys may need to be more vocal because Grenadians need to know what is going on.
Oh, yes. And there have been persons within civil society. I'll give some credit to Sandra Ferguson, Denise O'Gilvy, and the others who have worked before me as part of civil society, who have tried to address issues. But again, when you have an administration that is so quote unquote powerful, then you're labeled as a troublemaker, and then they shut you off and they shut you down. But we have tried. I know that within my space, while I may not be in the media, I have been having discussions not just with my civil society colleagues, but with members of government, members of different ministries, as it relates to different issues that are affecting young people. So, everything doesn't always have to be publicized, but we are working. And yes, I do agree that we need to be more vocal. For my civil society colleagues who may look at this program, and they will tell you that I have been saying to them, we need to start being more vocal. We need to start being the watchdog for the people, especially given now that we don't have an official opposition. We need to start addressing this. And this is not an effort to bash any administration, because I do believe that any administration that sits in government, they do and they don't. But when they fail, there needs to be that voice who will speak out and say, no, this is not accepted. And even as a people, we need, what are we fearful of? That is a question that I always ask. You go into communities and you hear so many stories about victimization, you hear so many stories, and you say to persons, do you want to go to the media? Do you want to talk about it? You're not making it up. You're not going there to bash the person, the individual, the entity, but we need to let the Grenadian public know what is going on, what is happening, and educate them on their rights as well as their responsibilities. How many Grenadians have actually read the Constitution? How many actually knows what their constitutional rights are? So I hope that this platform would be used to educate especially young people as to what our rights are as well as what our responsibilities are as a people, especially given this particular era in history where we do not have a official political opposition.
Most definitely, in the words of Patrick Paul, the praying mantis, he coined the phrase that says that Calypsonian is the official opposition of the people, and I love your point of view and your train of thoughts. And also, I would like to see, even in your field, in terms of civil society, more young people being involved. So, what I would ask you, what are some of the things that you guys need to do to
Well, young
bring
people don't
in?
want to volunteer anymore. Volunteerism has died. I mean, civil society doesn't have money to pay anybody. We have little access to financing, so we depend primarily on volunteerism for survival. Especially, if you look across, not just in Grenada, if you look across the region, most civil society organizations, NGOs, CBOs, they are primarily run by one or two or three persons, who are passionate about what they're doing and the things that they love in their respective areas. Volunteerism has died, so that is going to become an issue, and it is an issue for us as civil society organizations. But we're still going to urge persons, if you have a passion for agriculture or for just being a voice, of the people, you can get involved. We have a lot of organizations around who are doing stuff, and I want to urge those organizations as well. It's time for us to start working together. So many things have been done in solace, in isolation. We need to start sharing information and being a collective, being one voice. I think we have said that a dozen or so times since we sat here, but I think it's very instrumental that we do that as a people.
Most definitely, and most of the points that you raise, you stated that this most of the problems are being experienced by other Caribbean countries as well. So is this a thing whereby there is this common problems facing the region in terms of leadership?
One of the things that I've said, and I'm going to say this here, that though we're separated by water, across the region we are faced by similar problems. Political, social, economic, they're all similar. So within civil society, Barbados, St. Vincent, Trinidad, Jamaica, St. Lucia, we all share similar problems. And hopefully, because I've been working with a lot of civil society organizations in the OECS, and we are trying to come up with solutions. And that is the term that I'm going to keep throwing out there, because we, over the years, we have had too many talk shops. We have sat in so many sessions, many of them replicated. We done that 2 years ago. We need to stop repeating that. We need to stop talking, and we need to start doing.
Well, most definitely, work is gonna create a movement of action, and a lot of these issues will be addressed. And the mere fact that we can have a young person as yourself who can come on and spark the minds, I'm sure a lot of our listeners, minds and brains would have been expanded by just this conversation. And I definitely see it as a seed that will take deep roots in terms of people coming forward and taking affirmative action. And as you stated, this is not a program to bash any administration, but this is a program to ask serious questions of our leaders. And it is not coming from a place of bitterness, but it is coming from a place of love, a love for our country, love for our generation. And most definitely we have to be able to take the politics and put it aside and to look at things objectively. And I think that is what woke is about. Woke is not a bashing program whereby people who are politically bitter and have vendettas, but it's about young people that care for the country and for their generation and wants to pull our nation together to uplift, to inspire and to build. And that is what work is about. And I must say it was a pleasure having you on this program. And I'm learning as people in our audience. My mind is being expanded, and I'm in awe. So I must say, Miss Mitchell, it has been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. I want to take the opportunity to urge young persons who will be viewing, listening to this program, that of course this is not going to be my last time here, but we need to put aside the politics, as you say, and come together as a collective voice. The issues that affect us as young people transcends the political arena. We need to address it. I am worried as to the direction that Grenada is going, and I hope that this is not just going to be a program that persons are just going to look and make comments, but actually provide solutions as well. So for the persons who are listening and they want to make suggestions as to even some of the things that can be discussed on the program, some of the things that affect us as young people, and not just put it out there, but make suggestions as to how you think some of these issues can be resolved, and to call on the policymakers. I think over the years as young people, we feel that we have been left out of the discussions. We are tired of you making the decisions for us and deciding what we want. Now we're going to be telling you what we want, and we're going to demand and ensure that you listen. That I'm certain of.
Yes, guys, my sister is definitely woke. But most definitely, we urge each and every one of our audience to come in with your comments and your suggestion. We will definitely take your suggestion as to develop future discussion. And this is an interactive conversation. This is an interactive relationship that we have with you. And we embrace your support and we embrace your feedback. Any
Well, no
closing
parting words
lines?
for me, and just maybe a forewarning, if I may, to our policymakers that young people we are demanding a seat at the decision-making table. We ask that you listen to us. We do have a voice. We do have solutions that we think that you can take into consideration, and step aside a bit. We are the majority. We know what we want. So this is a platform created and led by young people, because we see that there is no other platforms created for us. So we have created our own, and hopefully the policymakers and the decision makers will be listening to this. And I'm not going to be the only person. We're going to be pulling in like-minded persons and demanding that our voices be heard.
And most definitely, before we close, I must thank Grenada Broadcast, Mr. Grant, for granting us the opportunity to have this program on his platform. I think that he's sowing a beautiful seed, a seed that is going to take a lot of deep root, and the young people will definitely make him proud, by elevating this platform. And I urge everyone in the audience out there to support this platform. It's an educating platform. It's a platform that, would challenge you to think critically and he has a very beautiful Sunday program, and I urge all of you guys to join in, and even potential companies who may want to advertise on this program as well. So it's important that you support Grenada broadcast.